Awesome. I'm Dete Meserve. I'm so glad to see all of you here today. I'm a film and television producer from Los Angeles. I just got in last night. And so if I look a little bleary-eyed, it's because I got about 3 hours of sleep. But I'm getting used to your time zone just in time for me to go back to LA this afternoon. I'm really excited to talk with you. And if I had been making this presentation 5 years ago, this is how I would have opened it 5 years ago. I would have said, welcome to the exciting world of the entertainment industry, an arena where dreams come alive and creativity knows no bounds. The industry is experiencing tremendous growth and innovation with more shows and films being produced than ever before. Revenues are peaking, and streaming is emerging as a dominant force. That would have been 5 years ago, but not today. Today I'm going to tell you some less exciting news, but I'm going to help you understand how to weather through what we're going through. In some senses, the entertainment industry right now is flatlining. If you own a movie theater, it's looking pretty scary. Summer box office for this year is projected to drop from about $4.03 billion to about $3.3 billion. Disney, a long profit winner, is failing. Their superhero films are bombing. Disney Plus, which everyone keeps talking about, is not turning profits, and there's serious talk about selling ABC. Even Paramount, you may have read, is in the process of being sold. Paramount Plus is losing money, and Paramount TV Studios has been shuttered. At one time, those names, Paramount Global, Comcast, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Fox, they were all the powerful providers of entertainment and sports. But Wall Street is demanding profits, and these companies are now laying off people to achieve that. And as a result, the middle layer of craftsmen are losing out. Writers, for example, are losing. Even though you've heard about a strike, the earnings for feature film writers have dropped 20% since 2019. And writers' rooms, which are what you see on TV, they've become more diverse just in time for them to be fewer writer rooms at all. Even people behind big hits are having trouble getting traction with new material. The entertainment industry employment actually fell by 26%, and production in LA, where I am, is down by 40%. Now you guys are like, wow, why is she telling us all this bad news? What's this going to lead to? I promise I'm going to get to that. There have been so many firings and layoffs at every outlet, everything from Amazon to Paramount Global, from Apple to even PBS. And the supposed sure shot for the entertainment industry of recent months and years has been IP, intellectual property, like big franchises. But movies like The Marvels lost $237 million. Discovery, the channel, has lost millions. And the fear of risk is dooming a lot of shows to failure. College students are now being told, don't go into film and television production, go into entertainment management, learn the business of entertainment, no more degrees that make you creative with no other skill sets. That's scary. That's not what you want to be hearing about an industry as vibrant as the entertainment industry. But there is a deep and existential crisis that's going on, and there are signs of improvement. But I'm here today to help you understand where those opportunities are, where that innovation is, and how that can impact whatever you're planning to do in the content arena. At the same time that no one knows what's going to work in the entertainment industry, we know that the creator economy is still one of the fastest growing sectors, right? Almost everyone I hear from, no matter what sector they're in, food, software, healthcare, tech, has their eye on some form of content. Because we know that storytelling in this medium of what we call film and TV is one of the most powerful ways to inspire, to educate, and really to entertain. But also it's still one of the most powerful ways to reach millions and millions of people. And despite the downturn, not turn down, the downturn of the industry that I've just described to you, this media, traditional media, meaning not social media, still has tremendous power and reach. Right now, I'm the executive producer in television. That's the lead person of a television series called Weather Hunters that hasn't come out, and it's for PBS Kids. It'll come out next year. And here are the kinds of numbers they're estimating for a kids television show in the US. In the US, over 88 million people are expected to watch this show in the first 2 months. And that's just on, regular linear TV and advertiser-supported TV. And that's in the first 2 months. But because we're also making games, we're expected to reach another 3 to 5 million with our games, who will then come over and watch the show. And then because it's also on other new platforms that have just begun emerging, where educators can get the material, we're expecting another 1.7 to 2 million educators to take our materials into their classroom, which is tens of millions of kids that will get our materials. And that's just in the first 2 months, and that's just in the US. So my point is, the power of the media and the platforms that we have built that are already there are tremendously successful and have tremendous reach. If you take those numbers I just gave you in context and said, hey, I'm going to apply box office figures and sort of assume like $11 a person, a TV show, little kids television show, has the potential to be seen by as many people as a film that grosses $968 million. So you can see these platforms that are not in your movie theaters have the potential to really not only generate revenue, but generate significant viewership. The thing is, content still is king, despite everything I've told you about the problems in the entertainment industry. And the audiences for content are huge. But of all the content that is being created, it is driven by innovations that aren't making the headlines, right? That aren't being prefaced with breathless words like revolutionary or game changers. They're being adopted very slowly, steadily. They are improving our workflows. They're increasing creativity sometimes. We'll come back to that. And they are reducing costs. And I'm going to talk about a few of those. One of the biggest innovations, period, is the remote nature of some production work. Less than 5 years ago, I was working on another animated series, and I housed that animated production in an office space that cost thousands of dollars a month. I slammed dozens of people into small rooms, some without windows, I'm sorry to say. We had a very crummy refrigerator that didn't work most of the time. And then I was asking people to work 40, 50 hours a week, commute in LA traffic for 45 minutes or more, take another 10 to 15 minutes to find parking. Now that whole paradigm has changed. Today, I can hire the best talent anywhere and everywhere. I used to tell people, if you want to be in the entertainment business, you gotta come to LA. Now I have employees in Indiana and Georgia and Canada and all over the world. I can hire the best talent where they are. And they don't have to commute anywhere, and they never have to go into an office. On the show I'm doing now, it's based in Nova Scotia in Canada. It's on Atlantic time. So I can actually pick people who are in the Eastern time zone that's actually advantageous for the production, and choose staff who are in this time zone to help us take digital delivery of the assets from the animation studio and process them before us LA creatives wake up. That simple shift has given us the benefit of time, because now we're able to work more seamlessly across many time zones. And in fact, the show I'm working on now pretty much is in production in some time zone 24/7. So instead of it just being, okay, LA, now it's time to go to bed, we're in a situation where everything can keep going round the clock. The production leaders are often still in LA, I will say that, because that's where we have been. But we are all loving that we don't have a commute. That gives us more time to work on more material and to spend more time on it. And it's healthier, let's be honest. Many of us have said we are not in offices crammed anymore, and we're not as sick, so we don't miss as much time on a production. But the way we are reviewing material has changed just dramatically. I mean, in a way that you kind of can't believe how briefly it was that we did it differently. Just a few years ago, when a version of an episode of a television series was ready for review, you'd get a movie file, and then you'd watch it, and you'd stop and start it. You'd write down the time code with whatever your notes are. And now there are countless pieces of software. I use Pix, I've used Frame.io, ShotGrid, so many of them that allow me to put my notes directly on that frame of animation or live action. And because everyone on the team can see the notes, regardless whatever time zone they're in, then we can actually have dialogues that are happening across time zones and across different departments within the same show, which is phenomenal for creativity. And it means that we can hire people all around the globe to create and review that material when it works for them. In the old days, we used to have to try to schedule a Tuesday morning because that worked for India and it worked for UK, and now we all just work asynchronously and are able to get this work done in a much more seamless way. The changes are also happening in post-production. For those of you who are not in television film production, post-production is that part after the movie has been shot, or an animation after animation has been completed. Now you're doing editing, you're doing music, your sound effects, your color correct. And that's an essential part of production that, to me, actually makes that product the best that it absolutely can be. So for example, when I was editing a film that's called Space Camp, it was an animated film I was doing for Universal and DreamWorks that came out last summer. There was no one ever in the room with the editor, not with each other and not with the editor. We used a program called Evercast, and we used that to watch and call the edits in real time. And that meant something else. We could hire the editor we wanted. We didn't have to say, oh, she's available or he's available this day. And in fact, there was an editor I really loved that I wanted to work with, and she had a chronic illness that prevented her from going into an office, but she could work from home on Evercast. And so we were able to work with her on this movie. And for me, as a working mom, it was also great because I wasn't stuck in Burbank with a sick child at home. My sick child was at home, and I could step 5 minutes away to check on her in the middle of the edit. So it really meant something that I think is hard to calculate, but when you're doing your best work is when you are joyful, when you are relaxed, when you're at your creative best, and you can't do that when you're rushing around in rush hour traffic in LA. All this innovation surely is good, right? I mean, I'm talking about a lot of things here that sound really good, and I want to give you sort of the dark side of it a little bit. When I was started in the entertainment industry, I was the VP of a company called Windancer Films, and we were in production on a show called Home Improvement. I know that was a really long time ago, but it's a show called Home Improvement with Tim Allen. And the way that the network would give notes was dramatically different than your network, your client, gives notes now. Then you would, maybe the executive producer and the writer might be in a room together, give a few notes, and then you'd be done. The network had 1 or 2 people, the executive and maybe somebody else. So maybe you'd get collectively 4 people's notes on a very big television series. Now, Because all of that is available to anyone, anytime, the networks and the studios can open that up to like 8, 10 people. And you may be getting notes on your content from 8 to 10 different people somewhere in the pipeline. That means that every single one of those notes, you'll have to have staff that have to evaluate them, to parse them, to decide what to do with them. And most of the time, that doesn't make it better. If you as a viewer are noticing things in television right now and in film of like, hey, I'm seeing the same stories over and over, it feels like a little cookie cutter, that's because that noting process is taking the creativity out of it, because anyone and anybody can at any time make notes on content, and more so than probably ever before. More people noting means someone has to track their notes. As I said, I have now multiple coordinators that all they do is track people's notes. Someone has to interpret them, someone has to decide which ones have to go forward, someone has to assign them out. It is a tremendous amount of work of production that we didn't have to do before because we weren't getting that many notes. And not all notes are good, guys. As I've mentioned to you, they don't always make it better. In fact, they can make it worse because creators and directors start anticipating what they call the notes, and they start working toward the notes. In other words, I don't want to get a whole bunch of notes, so I'm just going to make this safe, and I'm going to make this change in a way that will hopefully not get a lot of pressure. So in my mind, content is being killed by what we call the CBBs. In production, the CBB is could be better. It's really a subjective opinion, often given by someone with little or no experience and no real stake in the series or understanding of how things get made or budgets or schedules or production pipelines. And that's making shows cost more money. So all the gains we've made by having tech are actually being sometimes lost by the fact that we have tech, and someone can literally make notes while they're high on margaritas, while they're in Hawaii, or 2 a.m. when they're sleep deprived because they have a baby. So those kinds of comments are actually part of the loss that tech has given us. And just like how people comment in social media, the same thing is happening to us. Things that you would never say in person in a creative meeting, people now feel very free to write that in Frame.io and to say, hey, I don't like this, and to nitpick, where if you were in the same room with us creators, you would probably not make those notes, but you can because you can sit behind your keyboard now if you're a network executive or somebody involved in it. On one show I was running, this is the last thing I'll say about this, there was, the network kept saying, well, the core matrix thinks that, and they would finish their thought. And I was like wondering, who is the core matrix? Was this like an advisory group? Was it a bunch of producers? Was it experts? Like, who was this core matrix that they were referring to? And it turned out that it was the people down the hall, the accountants, the finance guys, the marketing guys, no one who'd ever made anything. And I'm not faulting those guys for what they do, but it's like assuming, like, if you were Eli Lilly, that the accountant is weighing in on the formula for a new migraine medication because he's had migraines, right? That's what's happening because of all of this tech. And the other thing that people keep saying, well, surely AI is going to help with all of this. And I know you've heard lots about AI, and I want to talk about it from a different perspective for the film and television industry. Just like how CGI really did, and digital editing really did transform filmmaking, artificial intelligence is placing unimaginable new creative tools in the hands of everyone, writers, directors, producers, artists in particular. And with current AI capabilities, you can workshop an idea, you can develop your multi-dimensional characters, you can craft narratives faster than ever before. But here's where there is a little bit of a rub. There's a problem with AI for many of us in the industry who are making things for the networks and for the studios. On all of my shows in both this year and 2023, any form of AI, especially generative AI, is expressly prohibited. And you're probably wondering, why? Isn't this great tool? Now everybody can come up with all these great ideas. The problem is, with a few exceptions like Adobe that has supposedly cleared some of the information that they're using to feed the AI, most of it is uncertain, and we don't know the origin and whether or not it may be copyrighted material. We don't want somebody in this audience whose material was used by that AI to say, hey, wait a second, that might be embedded in the AI that you used to create this show, and now you've distributed around the globe and tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. That risk is way, way too high. That is what can happen, and that's why the industry right now is very conservative about the use of AI. Because a lot of our work is now on so many platforms, on SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, and pay TV, and linear TV, and free TV, all around the globe, and then dubbed, and all of that, the stakes are incredibly high, and we have to represent and warrant to our client, these networks, these studios, that our material is free and clear of copyright issues. And what also plays into this is music. People are like, well, why don't you just use AI to generate the music for your show? Won't that be cheaper than hiring a composer? And I'm like, first of all, no. And secondly, we are not allowed to. Because we're often selling those music publishing rights, and if they've been generated from AI, they have no value because no one knows the actual origin of that copyright. Music publishing, for example, in a television series, just from a revenue standpoint, is a minimum seven figures that you will lose if you decide to use AI. So we don't use it. There's, for me, I just want to say, a human factor. I'm the boss of many shows, including the one I'm running right now, and I cannot ask a human artist to toil away designing characters and backgrounds and props for an animated show and send that person an AI-generated image that I've come up with as a reference for one of their designs. I just don't think that's being a good human leader, because I think the writing is on the wall. Many of those jobs that people have dreamed about and many of the jobs people have toiled in decades will eventually go away, but I don't need to be part of that right now. Here's what I think is essential to know. Talk to anyone who is involved creatively in a production. That's writers, directors, producers, actors, designers, art directors, even production designers, and ask them where they need help. And they're not going to say to you, I need help in coming up with creative ideas. That's why we do this work, is that we have creative ideas. What we need are the tools to take away the drudgery of that work. We don't need AI writing us a poem or writing the lyrics to a song or coming up with a story idea. We're good at that. All of us humans are good at that. What we really like, what we have not seen yet, and we're starting to see some of that, is some of the things that AI could help us with. In a production, as my friends who are here today know, like my email goes all day long, hundreds and hundreds of emails. I wish AI would say, this is the one you need to pay attention to. These other 27 you can ignore. Here's the summary of that one. Oh, this person needs to be reminded to turn in their script. Oh, you need to review this today. What are your notes on that? AI has not yet figured out how to make my life better, but lots of people keep showing me, look how they can draw this for me, or look how they can write the script, or look how they can write these lyrics. Isn't this funny? Or, hey, you know that show you created? I put that into there, and it generated an idea for a script. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in that. That is the work for us humans. That's what we want to do, right? What we need AI to do is do things like collate those notes that came from the network and decide what to do with them, and to go and prioritize them. We don't have those tools yet. They're starting to be there. But that is what is always surprising to me, is that how many people come to me and say, you know, you can do AI can do all this for you. And you're like, I don't want AI to do the very reason I'm in this business for the first place, which is to create content. Now, in addition to being a film and TV producer, I'm also a published author. My 6th book, called The Memory Collectors, is coming out next May. And I do use AI, but only as a writing researcher, because just like all authors, I have to represent and warrant to my publisher that every word I wrote in there is my own and not someone else's. But I do use it for research, and I find it really, really compelling there. I have, for example, on the flight here, I'm reviewing the editorial letter that came from my publisher, and she asked me, it's a weird question, but it relates to the plot. She goes, if someone is convicted of vehicular manslaughter, would they lose their license? That's a plot point in there, and she was asking that. And I thought, wow, if I went into Google, I would probably get and be bombarded from now to the eternity with every defense attorney ad for the rest of my life, right? I'm not looking for a defense attorney. I'm looking to understand, would this character who was convicted of vehicular manslaughter, would they lose their license? So something like Perplexity or ChatGPT has some reliability, and for me as an author, that just reduced the amount of time I have to do in research, and that is a useful tool. But as I found out with working with them, the hallucinations are still really prevalent. And I don't know when they are hallucinating, so I always have to check even that information again. And even my publisher will check that when we go through what's called copy edit. So I do find these are useful tools, but notice that I'm using the word as a tool, not that it's leading creativity, but it is a tool for it. I don't want to lose time today and not talk about some of the major innovations that are changing the entertainment industry, that are fantastic tools. Many of them you've heard about. For example, Real Engine 5 has been something a lot of people have been talking about. I have not worked in this arena yet, but it has enabled some of the most iconic scenes in film and television and in video games. And it's able to do some fantastic things that even we humans have had difficulty. Lighting, for example, in animation is a very complicated process, and some specialists that have decades and decades of experience, and then you see something that Real Engine does without any of that, and it's pretty amazing. We also have virtual production with real-time rendering, and that's something that has changed more for these shows that are very expensive. On the lower level, that's not really helping us because it's too expensive. We also have had LED walls. I don't know if you've been seeing about them. That has transformed everything from even the most basic music videos to more complicated, because they allow you to project a background and not have to be there. That's been a really big plus. A good friend of mine is at a company that all they do now is the most fun part of the creative process, which is the pre-viz, the pre-visualization. And that allows you to see your movie kind of in advance, not like the old days where somebody would storyboard out with a pencil, but actually be able to see worlds that you're creating. It helps you decide, well, should I use CG for this effect, or should I use it as a practical within the camera with a physical approach? And much less expensive than sitting on a film set and making those decisions while the clock is ticking and money is being burned. So you are going to see that because of that, people are going to be able to make all this content without other people. And I'm sure that that is something we're going to see in the future. I'm not saying it's good, because I definitely feel, as a producer in this industry now for 30 years, my work is better by the people who are around me, And yes, as a novelist, I write mostly on my own, but then I always have like editors and other people that are involved in that content creation. So I'm not sure that making it all by yourself, as sexy as that sounds, is definitely going to get more viewers. But what does get more viewers? Here's what I want to share with you. What the entertainment industry knows is that the unexpected still has the greatest power to break out. The unexpected. But Hollywood right now is not in the unexpected business. It's in the predictable business. They are looking for things they can predict that will get them to the bottom lines they need for their Wall Street shareholders. It's that predictability business means there's an opportunity for everyone here to look at other possibilities, because your ideas that aren't predictable, that are unexpected, are not being made by Hollywood right now. Everyone is scrambling to put out the wish list for the thing that they think is going to work. One week it was rom-coms. Everybody I knew was like, I got a rom-com. And the next week it was no rom-coms. They're dead. We want fantasy. We want that. Oh, and then the next week it's, oh, historical fiction. What do you got in historical fiction? Bridgerton was huge. And then the week after that, it's oversaturated and too expensive, and nobody wants that. So anyone here who's thinking about this, if you're chasing a trend, you are doomed to failure. Where your real success can be is in the unexpected, and that's where the opportunities are. Because Hollywood and the entertainment industry really does resist change, and it resists innovation until someone or something forces its hand. And that introduction I gave you about what's happening in the industry is the disruption that all of you may have been waiting for. The patient may be flatlining now, as I mentioned, but that event is going to lead to new opportunities that no one can predict at this point. Content creators can thrive and flourish if you're patient, if you're nimble, and if you're willing to work in the unexpected. Being nimble, incredibly important right now. You don't know how many people come up to me every day, because I have my own production company, and they say, I want one too. And I'm gonna start spending money, I'm gonna start loading up on people and equipment, I'm gonna take all these meetings, and I'm gonna talk about all these things that I'm gonna be doing. And then suddenly that production company stops operating because they're having to lay off people, because the film they made wasn't a success, because they have too many people trying to do too much at the same time. So being nimble is actually better for an independent producer if you don't have a whole bunch of people that you have to feed every week and an overhead that you have to feed, so you end up just doing the same things over and over. Hollywood is definitely littered with the bones of hubris and the wrong-headed idea that anything that we do is easy and that overnight success is possible if you just want it enough. So what are the tools that are going to help us as we see this disruption happening in the entertainment industry? If you think I'm going to say tech, you're wrong, because I don't think you can plant a garden with tools alone. You're going to need soil and sand and water and the sun and organic material and labor, and the same is true for content. What we need are bold, new ideas. The human need to tell and to watch and to read and listen to stories is greater than ever. If you look at what social media is doing, a lot of times it's personal stories of that person, but the bigger stories are still to be told. Stories matter because so much of what we know or what we imagine or how we understand ourselves in the world around us comes from stories. The technology we create to use and tell these stories will continue to evolve, but the technology will always play, or needs to play, a supporting role. If you want to survive and flourish in this new disruptive entertainment landscape, you're going to need to tell stories. And not, again, those stories that are based on something you binge watched on Netflix. That's already been done. That's the predictability business. Your stories need to be authentic to you. Here's why. We are, I think, in some of the most exciting times ever, because the pipeline has been built. All that unsexy stuff about figuring out how to get content to everybody, anywhere, anytime, on their phone, their tablet, their TV, their whatever screen that is, that's been done. That's been figured out by everyone from Netflix to Amazon to Tubi. And as content creators, I think it's really possible that we're about to usher in a new era where we're no longer wholly dependent on Netflix or Disney or CBS giving us a green light. We're no longer under the thumbs of corporate overlords who give us way too many notes or consider a show a success not by its content, but by its ability to fatten their bottom line and generate profits. When we can find alternative sources of capital, and they're definitely out there, we can make and take our experience in making content and make it ourselves without 1,000 notes from the network. Can you tell I got like a little PTSD on that? And we can use that in distribution infrastructure that's already been built and platforms which are hungry for content to tell stories that break the mold, that aren't yet another remake or another franchise or a retelling of a story that we've already heard. 2024 is the year of sequels and remakes. Just to give you an example, of the 39 of the 50 most notable films listed for this year, most of them, 39, are remakes and sequels based on underlying IP. You have Dune Part 2, Kung Fu Panda 4, Deadpool 3, Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2, everything's a sequel. Take that aside and go, that's what they're doing, and know what do you want to do and what can you build with the highways, the pipes that are already there. That means that door is really wide open for new ideas. What I want to share with you is that I was approached by a funder after I did that movie I mentioned, Space Camp. And I was approached by him afterwards and he said, could you do something like that again? This is a relatively austere budget that we had produced this animated feature on. And he's an investor with considerable sums of capital. And he said, what if we just did it ourselves? Could you do it for less? Could you do it more quickly? Could we use the distribution platforms that are already in place? And I'm working on that movie. And I'm not using underlying IP. It's not a remake of something. It's a brand new idea that isn't based on a book or a franchise or a comic book or a graphic novel or all the things that we've been told are the only things you can make into a movie or a television series these days. And I'm just one of many producers who are looking at this, what I call smart money. It's investors coming in who say, look, you know how to make the content, you know how to distribute it, you know how to find audiences. The other thing I would say to you in addition to that is that now there's an opportunity to really do all these cross-platform storytelling. I was working for a major streamer and a lightning bolt will shoot me down if I say who they are because they're highly secretive. You can probably guess who it is. And we kept talking to them throughout the production. I'm like, hey, you guys have this very big game platform. Could we develop some games based on some of the stories that we're telling here? And they're like, brilliant. We love this idea. But that means that somebody from that department has to come here. It'll be about 6 months for them to evaluate it. And I don't think it's going to happen. And it didn't. And this company again, not naming them, has a really strong bottom line. They have the ability to make that. But we are seeing now producers like myself, even on the series that I'm doing now, where we're taking and doing multiple things with that content. So the Weather Hunter show I was just mentioning to you, that show, we have 4 digital games, mobile games that kids will play. We have books. We are looking and working with to develop podcasts. So those same characters, those same emotions, those storylines, that curriculum in the case of the show can play across all these different platforms and engage people where they are. One of the things that we're trying to figure out right now is, what do we do about YouTube? How do we take those characters that we've created in that world, and how does it live differently on YouTube? What are we going to create for that? As a creator, that's super, super exciting and not expensive. It can be done, and easier done when you're working as an independent producer. As I mentioned, some of the behemoths, they can do these things, but the bureaucracy creates major hurdles for them. So I'm actually, even though I started this presentation with, here's everything wrong with the entertainment industry, I'm very optimistic about the future, and particularly for people with new ideas, or for people who have fresh ideas that aren't just a retread of what's already been made. I think that we're in a place where we can see a marketplace with fresh, innovative stories are brought to life, where audiences can engage with original narratives instead of the tired tropes the mega corporations want to force feed us based on IP that we already know. And this innovation that we're seeing will revolutionize the entertainment industry. It will foster creativity in ways that we aren't seeing now. And we've already optimized the distribution systems, the pipes again, and those are going to be used to get fresh content to viewers anywhere and every time. And my hope is that leads to a new era of innovative narratives, fresh narratives that resonate with viewers on a much deeper level, ultimately transforming the way we experience and interact with stories. And to me, that's the entertainment, the innovation the entertainment industry desperately needs. And I'm very hopeful that all of you can be a part of that. Whether you're creating something right now that's small, that can grow into something big, or if you've always dreamed of telling a story or getting your content seen by tens of millions of people, I think the gateways are much more open than they were even 5 years ago or even just a couple of years ago. So my last words to you, as I see I have just a couple of seconds here left, is go out and create with joy and with playfulness, and create what is fresh and new and exciting, and please give us something we haven't seen before. Thank you so much.